and welcome to week 4. It is week 4, isn't it? Yes, it is week 4. I'm getting confused. Sorry that this is a day or so late. As I explained, we've had a bit of a death in the family. Well, we've had a death in the family, and that's thrown me a couple of days out from my usual planning. So apologies for that. It does have a knock-on effect for the session this evening, which will be going ahead, but instead of giving you the assessment brief in this video, what I'm going to do is do that at the session later. So if you can do your best to turn up to that. If you are not able to attend, then please drop me an email and I can send you a GoToMeeting link, so you can still join me for that at some point. What I'd actually like to go through first is just a bit about the drop-in sessions. They are drop-in sessions, however, they are a significant part of this module, and the activities that I ask you to prepare for them are very valuable in terms of how you will progress through this module. So I would just encourage you to make every effort to attend. If you can't attend, please feel free to email me stuff and I'll get back to you as soon as possible with responses and feedback on it. But you do need to show up at some point. They do run from around about 4:45 to 7:30 on the Tuesday evening, so there's a good window time there, a good window for you to come in, and the one-on-one or kind of in small group feedback in small groups is a very effective way of getting the information across quickly, rather than me stood up in front of a class teaching, just talking at you parrot fashion. And the people who've attended, I'm sure, would agree that the feedback process is certainly very valuable in that format. If you have questions as you go along through these lectures, again, if you want to jot them down and email them to me, I will answer those. Or you can bring those to the drop-in sessions as well, so that we can go through those. So there's every opportunity for you to ask questions and feedback on the work, on the lectures that you're watching, and but you've also got that contact time there as well, which is very important. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today. So we're a little bit ahead in the schedule, actually. I think I'm about a session and a half. Half a session ahead of where I want to be, which is certainly good at this point in time for me. But like I say, what I'm keen to do is make sure that you have every opportunity to meet with me and get that face-to-face contact as well. So after this week, I'll be around about a full session ahead, particularly as I'm doing the assessment briefing in the session later on today, which will also be available online fairly soon afterwards. This session today is quite straightforward, and it will be stuff that you have done before, or some of the stuff will be things that you've done before, but I just want to put it into a retail context for you. So we're going to be looking at targeting customers and gathering information. Ultimately, the questions that we're going to be asking are: what influences a retail shopper, both pre-purchase and whilst they're doing the information search for that. It starts really with what influences anybody in terms of marketing, and that would be from demographics, lifestyles, their needs and desires, all this kind of thing. But then we'll also look at how retailers can best utilise that information as well. Well, demographics is the most straightforward one, and you will be familiar with these. And it's everything from what gender you are, how old you are, how much you earn, things like that. And obviously those have dependent on what things you can afford ultimately, but also the kind of things that you will aspire to as well. In terms of social factors, it's remarkable to see how people how social factors change, particularly with regards to retail and attitudes, how they develop. I'm thinking particularly of the rise of Primark with this, and it being seen as very much a lower working class kind of store, but now it's seen as a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek, ironic, stylish, but a lot more people are using it. It's amazing how much money can be made from selling very cheap goods. Just a few psychological factors here. I'm not going to touch on these too much. If you've done my visual merchandising module, you'll have seen these anyway. Psychological factors. There are a few things within it. It basically goes about thinking how people see themselves and how people fit into how people see themselves fitting into society. So Freud's system of the id, the superego, and the ego is really about how people balance what they think about themselves and how that relates to cultural rules, society in general. And then what the ego does is seek to balance between those two. In terms of trait theory, it really looks at traits of people, and it looks at how extrovert people, for example, are more likely to buy brighter coloured clothes, and be more interested in brighter products in general. And how more introverted people will be looking at more familiar, regular purchases. Extroverted people are more likely to buy on impulse, rather than introverted people are more likely to just stick to what they know. They do tend to be quite arbitrary. All the kind of psychological factors psychological ways of categorizing people or identifying people do tend to be quite arbitrary. However, they do come useful when you start looking at broader groups of people. So you can't do very detailed analysis on people through this, but what you can do is look at general different types of people. And when you look at lots of people, you can learn how to identify them in better ways. And some of the ways that we can think about people is seeing their personality, for as I've already said, in terms of whether they are introverted or extroverted, but also people have a propensity to buy in terms of their class. If they're when you put that on top of the introvert extrovert, for example, when you put a class consciousness on that, extroverted people are more likely to be class conscious, but are also more likely to be aspirational within that, so they want to move classes as well. Attitudes and opinions are also very important, as are everything from religious beliefs to sexuality, gender issues as well. So there's a whole range of different things within lifestyles, and particularly within attitudes for that. It fundamentally comes down to risks and what the risks are to people's buying behaviour processes, and for a very relatively low risk purchase, i.e. stuff that's not going to cost you money, that's not going to, might be that it's not going to cost you money, but it also might be that you know it's not going to damage your social standing, for example. However, if you are put in a position where you yeah, I'm sure you've often heard somebody say, you know, I wouldn't be seen dead shopping in this place. Well, that's about having a social risk attached to a purchase behaviour. So being aware of all these kind of functions is something that you need to be able to do. Just thinking about some of the environmental factors, lots, frankly, from various changing traits, and you've all done pest analysis and pest analysis, I'm sure. One thing that obviously is significant is the economic factors within that, but also a much broader feeling than just, you know, economic factors aren't enough on their own. What you need to do is combine it with how much disposable income people feel that they have. So there are various different implications from this, from gender roles right through to actually how much time people have to go out shopping now, and how easy it is to do shopping at home. So as an individual, what makes you shop where you want to shop? Well, there are various different things, theories behind this, in terms of you go with what you know, you go with learned behaviour that you've learned from parents and friends. But what you fundamentally do is some kind of information search based on what you need. So if we just think about needs and desires for now, needs are they are requirements, the basic shopping requirements. And just counteracting that with desires, these are more, they are discretionary, so they're not absolutely essential to survive, but they are very important in terms of people's well-being and emotional well-being. You know, if you can, if you can, you know, that bar of chocolate, for example, isn't you know, a basic shopping need. Okay, for some it might be, but you know, it's a very desirable purchase, and therefore it is discretionary. You don't need to have it, but it's something that you perhaps want. I'm avoiding using the word wants because that brings into several different elements in terms of the overall purchase behaviour process, which I'm not going to go into right now, but certainly needs and desires are how we really fundamentally identify where our products fit into the retail environment, and identifying what needs we're satisfying with our products is something that's key. And in the seminar session later, you'll at least hear me mention a drill bit that you might buy from B&Q, probably at least once, maybe even 4 times. So just thinking about the consumer decision-making process, how the process that people actually go on when they're buying, when they're considering a purchase. This has several different factors within it. The involvement of the purchase is a key factor within it. So that would be what is at stake by buying this product, the cost of the product, the opportunity cost of the product, which is the length of time it takes you to actually go and buy it, as well as the financial cost. So one of the things that I'm asking you to do for the exercise is to look at various different purchases from, those high involvement purchases, which will be, a car, for example, right down to really habitual purchases like a tin of beans, and how the buying behaviour process changes for those. So let's just have a look at a couple of simple buying behaviour processes. The top one, this one, is referred to as AIDA, and what it takes is the customer is aware of a need and aware of a product that will satisfy that need. They get an interest in that product. You then can focus that interest into making them want that product, making it into a desire. So you're taking people from just being aware of something through to actually wanting it, and then you can take them through into action. So but that can be broken down into a little bit more detail by this down here. So a customer recognizing a need, then looking at products which would satisfy that need. So they're getting lots of information about that. They then will evaluate those alternatives. So to take a ridiculous example for retail, buying a car. Your car's broken down, or you've had an accident or whatever, and all of a sudden you need to get a new car. You've identified that you need to get a new car. Well, you then have a big information search where you can look at all the various brands of cars, the different makes, different models, and you have an enormous amount of information to search through, both in terms of cost, in terms of style, luxury level, that kind of thing. So you have a big evaluation of alternatives, and then that takes you onto a purchase decision. Post-purchase behaviour, which is particularly important for certainly higher involvement purchases. This is where it's really important to reassure customers that they have bought the right thing, that they've made the right choice. And we do that by not only kind of adding guarantees onto things and other mechanisms like that, but fundamentally offering great service at that post-purchase behaviour. It's called dissonance reducing. So there might be with a high involvement purchase in particular, customer might be thinking, have I bought the right thing? Have I made the right decision? And what you need to be able to do is go, yes. So there are three fairly common types of decision-making process. Extended decision-making processes, which would include all the factors within that process that I've just gone through, which would be high involvement purchases like house buying, cars buying, even to some extent luxury goods, Christmas presents, that type of thing. Limited decision making, where there are a limited number of factors that are available to you, but you might have a certain key. So, for example, price might be a limiting factor within that, as in the terms of or dates. In this example, for a holiday, and then there's the routine purchases as well. For more information about the buying decisions, there is a great YouTube video which you can watch, which I'd recommend looking at. So in terms of how we can affect that buying decision process, there are typically three marketing strategies that could be employed. A mass marketing strategy, which is as many things to as many people as possible. A concentrated marketing strategy would be very much where you are selling goods to one specific group, and that might be you're selling a specific type of good to a specific group, and Primark is a good example of this, where you've got a particular type of goods, i.e., relatively cheap, don't ask questions about how it's made clothing, and the people that would shop there. A differentiated marketing strategy would be looking at where you'd typically have two different approaches for one group. Now I'm thinking the one that kind of pops into mind, it's probably more reflection of me rather than anything else, is Fortnum & Mason's. Fortnum & Mason's is a very, 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 very old and distinguished grocer in London. That's probably doing it a disservice if you have a look at the website. It's fantastic. And they have excellent products. But they have their regular shoppers. Now, it's where the Queen gets her stuff from. The Queen, it's basically the Queen's corner shop. Most of her products come from there, and what ends up on her table comes from there, or is supplied through it. There is an incredibly large market that they cater for, with the very wealthy households in London, and they treat it effectively like a Tesco or a Waitrose. This is beyond Waitrose Bosch. But there's also a very large tourist market as well. So there are two different customer groups, and that it requires two different approaches to the retailing within it. So just thinking about how we go about gathering information. How do we go about taking a product, selling it, and the customer, and how do we go about making them buy it again? We need to be making sure that we have enough information and correct information, because things can go wrong. There are several pitfalls within it, and a lot of them are involved about bad decision making because of the inadequate information within it. And that would be about overestimating demand. It would be about failing to spot changes in trends around it. One of the best things that we can do is look at how we look at managing databases and collecting information about it, and building a marketing information system, which would include mapping environmental factors, philosophy and objectives and strategic plans of the retailer, with data collection, data that's being collected, looking at how that information is controlled in terms of how it's used and how it's mapped onto these different areas, and so we can see why has something worked and why hasn't things worked. And then what we do is we feed that into our retail operations for a more profitable retailing. So what kind of things can we look at? Well, we know customers, what they bought, how often they bought, what types of things they buy. And Tesco Club Card's been phenomenally successful, but what it gives is Tesco a direct window into what one person's transaction history is, and it gives them a great deal of feedback in terms of their whole marketplace within that. And there are a whole range of different places where we can get external information from as well. The commissioned research would be typically something like Mintel, where an external agency is being commissioned to do it. Tesco now outsource their Club Card. They started off running it in-house, but something like 60% of the UK population has a Tesco Club card, which is an awful lot of people. And it's now a little bit big, and there's lots and lots of data there for it. So being aware of where the sources of data come from is something that's very key. Just thinking about database management, and once we've got the data, what we do with it. Well, what we'd like to do is look at really through various different types of media, identifying very, very small segments of people, maybe even individuals, to do that. And I'm sure when you've had your Nectar card statement through, you've got vouchers with it for a particular type of purchase that you've made in the past to make you go into the store and buy them again. Same with Tesco Club card, same with your other loyalty card within them. In terms of market research, this is obviously the other key way that we find out in terms of, we gather data from people. It's important with market research to be very specific in terms of what you want and to have a clear understanding of what information you're trying to get. And you do that by really defining a clear problem. And then you look at the scenario that you want to do, that you want to get that. So if you might want to, recognise when people might want to buy a soft drink, for example. Well, this could be what you're looking to do is establish the propensity of people to buy it after a certain activity, and then recognise where they're doing that activity and getting your product as close to it as possible. There are various sources of primary and secondary data within the market research process. I'm not going to go into this in any great detail at all. It's something that we can look at later. The most important thing to remember with market research is primary data is best. However, unfortunately, it is also the most expensive form of primary research data in terms of it being, in terms of qualitative information being significantly better if you have the analytical processes to deal with it. Asking people yes or no questions isn't necessarily the best and most effective way, and I'll give you some examples of that later. So there's some further reading for this session, and for the drop-in session later, like I said, from around about 4:45 you can drop in, and I am taking a register for this, so those of you who haven't yet attended or have only been to the first session, I will be expecting you to see you over the next couple of weeks. Again, I'll be running the assessment briefing today as well, so that you can see that. I'll also hopefully have the module handbook. I was hoping to be able to post the module handbook today or yesterday as well. However, with things at home, it's been a little bit harder to do that. So what I want you to do is think about the buying decision process and the factors that we've looked at today. Explain how that it differs for various different types of purchases. So that might be high cost and low cost. It might be regular and irregular purchases. Then look at how retailers can influence these processes and how retailers can use this information to attract new customers. So what can it learn from its existing customers to help it attract new customers? Okay, so that's it from me. I shall see you later, and have a good day.